We'll kick it off. This is the Finance Committee. I'm pretty excited here because this is the first of something that we promised as a committee back at the first quarter, which is semi-annual budget reviews, which we're going to do today, and I'll get to what that entails. It's worth noting, though, that James rightfully brought up that we don't just need to leave it semi-annual, and although that's going to be our formal dive into all this, I think we can have a section to try to do this at least quarterly. So I've taken that on board, and we'll try to figure out the right rhythm, maybe a shortened version of this. But for this, we are going to dive kind of pretty deep. I think everyone did their homework, and we are going to, in some areas, go line by line on this stuff with it, which is kind of important to do on a pretty regular basis. What are we diving into? I'd like to break up this budget review into the following elements. First, I'll kind of welcome everybody to introduce the key players. I know some people aren't here, but the key players being department heads, members of the administration, just the city leaders who are actually spending the money that we actually have. So I'm going to lay that out, and any feedback or comments that we have as a committee, I'll also be acting as scribe to take that to them, and I'll report back at the next meeting any responses that we can't answer ourselves. The first part of the review will be first a revenue outlook. And so I'm going to be using July's revenue report, and we're going to go through the large movements that are pacing high or low off of what benchmark? 58%. That's just a simple 7 divided by 12, July out of 7 months out of 12 months. It's important to note that I also want to welcome Mr. Maloney came, and he can, in addition to being able to answer any questions that we might have, can't answer ourselves, also can comment on any updates with August numbers. So he's prepared to do that, and we're pretty appreciative because I'm going to be using dated information. After the revenue outlook, we're going to do expense reports versus budget. And that, I'm going to also kind of act as a little bit of a guide, but I hope that that is much more of just a free form. I really want us to be as vocal as we can, looking at the areas that you specifically saw as either higher or lower than you expected. But we can use budget as a guide, so I think that's a pretty cool report to be using for this purposes. After that, I'm going to open it up for anybody that wanted to make a comment. Although I don't think committee has any particular rules, I'm going to try to use the 5-minuter that we've kind of set as a council, as a general council. After that, there's just an open discussion I'd like us to have about kind of remaining needs for 2020. What haven't we done that we wanted to get done, that we either have money for, or as we went through the expense that we're just in such excess or overspend position that we know we're just not going to be able to get done. That would be the bulk of a 2020 review. I put on the docket a 2021 outlook. I think that's going to be a little sporty if we think we're going to get to that and have time to do that, but maybe there's time at the end to at least have a cursory discussion on what 2021 looks like or any budget looks. All good? Happy? Yes. Cool. All right, so who are the key players? Well, we have Treasury, Mr. Maloney, he's here. We have the auditor, Jim Stith. He wasn't able to make it, but he's been kind of answering questions that myself, the mayor's office, James had of him. There's Chief McCabe, there's Chief Kramer, the fire and police respectively. There is the safety service director. There is the Department of Public Works. John Murphy and Clint Zimmerman. And those are kind of the folks that I've made sure that, and I think we as a committee have made sure we've stayed in contact with as we go through the year. And I just wanted to make sure that the public knew their names, and those are the people we're talking to when we talk about the key players, or the big three, when I mentioned it in a previous committee meeting, was police, fire, public works. So I just wanted to state that. Now the meat of this stuff. Let's start with revenue. So if you guys don't mind, as I said, I printed out the revenue report, and using a pacing target of 58%, I highlighted for myself some of the items that I either wanted to note or discuss among us. But I really, really, really want you guys to be more vocal than me and just not have me go through it. So as we go through, just please comment, and Mr. Maloney the same way. If you see something or can answer a question, you don't got to raise your hand, just pipe in, okay? All right, if you open up the revenue report, what you'll see is expected revenue, year-to-date revenue, and then a percent collected, and that is where you can plus or minus from that 58%, or that 7 divided by 12. And in the end of July, I saw from an earnings tax perspective, which was a huge part of our overall ballpark $23 million, was pacing high at 63%. So that was a little bit surprising to me, considering we had extended filings and everything like that. And Mr. Malloy, did you think that that was what you expected to see?
It is a little high. Typically, the first half of the year, we usually get to about 52%, and another 8-9%. About 8% is July. So usually it's about 60% through July. We're doing a little bit better than that. When I was here the last time, we talked about we were behind.
Yeah.
At least our forecast, and we thought a lot of that was putting off the April 15th collections till July 15th. So I cautioned us about spending a bunch of money. Let's see how we are through July. Hopefully we've caught up, and we have caught up. So that was good news for everybody. And as Mr. DiNardo said, taking a further step, today's the last day of August, and August was about 8% higher than we expected to. So we're actually about $105,000 over last year through August, and just a little bit, a little bit behind if you look at typical percentages in the month. But I feel that our July number and our August numbers are good. I would expect the rest of the year to be right on target also.
What do you attribute that to? I mean, that's got to be surprising.
Excellent collection efforts. No.
Yep. No other way to explain it.
It really is all in the withholding tax still. So as we talked the last time, we were hoping that layoffs due to the COVID pandemic wasn't going to affect us as much as some of the other cities. And really, to my knowledge, there's only been one decent sized manufacturing company that's had a layoff in the last several months. That's going to hurt us maybe $10,000 or $15,000 per month, who they laid off and how many. But other monies coming in, again, business withholding, has been more than enough to make up for that. So pretty strong. The other industries have picked up where we've fallen short in our restaurant and bar business, that have suffered through this. So, overall, this year is going to be right about what was expected and what's in the budget. So for the next 4 months, I feel confident we're going to meet our targets. And 2020, from a revenue perspective, will be right where we thought it was going to be. When we talk about 2021, there's 3 or 4 things we have to look out for. But as we sit here at the end of August, we still don't know the answers. But as we get closer to the end of the year, and you guys start putting in more time about next year's budget, we'll have to have some serious discussions about what we think could happen next year, which won't be good.
Thanks for that. Good. I was just going to keep going, but encourage you guys to chime in. I used $100,000 as a little bit of a kind of threshold for myself, but I really don't want us to feel like we shouldn't talk about anything below $100,000 per sub account. I think is what I've been taught to use these things, not keep sub accounts. I saw, and I'll just kind of rattle, and you guys stop me or jump in if you see something different, okay, that you want to talk about.
Thank you.
I thought it was interesting that building permits, structure permits, were paced low. I actually thought with everyone staying home, there'd be a bunch of people doing work, because I know Lowe's and Home Depot is sure doing okay. So that wasn't a huge deal, because we're talking like a couple 50, 40,000 off of what I expect, or less than that probably, than what I expected. But I just thought it was interesting that I thought that'd be soaring way above pace. Yeah. Mind you, this is a $200,000 bucket of money, so it's not game changer, but it's interesting. Yeah.
And just with the building permits, so the real game changers on that is when we have these large buildings that get constructed. So, I guess 2 years ago, we had a good place in the building fees because Xavier's Health United building was being constructed, right?
Yeah, you're right.
So they had and then last year too, they had the apartments, that new apartment building right there at University Station is being constructed. And so they pay all their building fees at the very front. So when they apply for their building permits or when they're granted them, they pay them all there. So even though that new apartment building just went online now, they paid their building fees last year. So, the $50, or whatever it is for HVAC permits and stuff, I think we probably should go back and look at the building permit fee, the cost, and just evaluate that. I know that Tom Perry was wanting us to do that, but yeah, I think really, it's just those big buildings. So if, somebody wants to build something, I think we'll take the
No, that's a good point. One of those makes up for 100 house decks. Yeah. So that's a good point. This was more of a question, but it also noted that we're in line. I saw EMS services expected $500,000. I'm sure there's some sort of either grant or county funding that's coming from that, but I didn't know, I couldn't map it to anything.
Yeah, so
maybe I didn't look hard enough.
No, you're fine. So that specifically, most fire departments or whoever's providing ambulance service in a city or county, wherever, are doing it. But basically, it's billing. So when somebody gets transported by ambulance, we'll send them a bill, $500, $600, $700, what have you, and we basically send it to the insurance company. And we have a soft billing practice. So when we send that bill, we'll send them the bill a couple times. We'll send their insurance company the bill a couple times, in hopes that the insurance company will pay it. But if the insurance company doesn't pay it, we don't go after the person to get it. And so it's actually most fire departments around the area.
That's incredible to me. I actually thought that the special fire services is what you were talking about, which was way less. You're saying that we typically we outbill $500,000.
Yeah,
that's wild to me.
Yeah. And I was gonna say it used to actually be a separate fund. Just out of your all's curiosity, in case you care, it used to be a separate fund, and the state really has come in and told us, look, everything has to go in the general fund, even because we used to use that to help pay for medic supplies and ambulances and things. So,
well, I guess people are using the EMS services at exactly the same rate they did last year. So
sure, yeah,
because we are exactly billing out what we expected to bill. Thanks for that. I didn't know that. I thought it was special fire services.
Yeah.
Another element, I did text Jim, but the answer was actually still my fault, probably left confused, and I was hoping to get Tim. I see in the account 87, miscellaneous revenue for $209,000, and we haven't really collected. We've collected more than that, and so I didn't really know what $209,000 for miscellaneous revenue was. Do you see what I'm looking at?
No, I'm looking at Fund 87. What page are you on?
This would be page 3, total 87, account 87. Oh, 01.
Okay, so it's not
Quadruple
fund,
zero
it's not
for it.
Fund 87. It would
No,
be-
no, 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 not, it's not a fund, this is probably all in the general.
Yeah, so this actually, Mr. Maloney can definitely answer part of this, because this, yep, exactly. So if you, essentially the city, when we have money in our bank account, so we get, revenue from the interest on that because we use Star Ohio Fund that Mr. Maloney works with the state to do. Although I'm sure that the amount of interest that we get from that is probably going to be less in the future with interest rates plummeting, but who knows?
Yeah, so it's always a combination of interest rates available and cash in the bank, right? We do very little cash flow analysis, so it's hard to project our disbursements kind of on a daily or a week-by-week level. I mean, I'd take anything right now that would help us move cash around to some accounts where we get more interest. Any interest-bearing account, any interest that we earn is through Star Ohio, so a state of Ohio program that helps municipalities like us. And there were some years where that fund paid 0 interest in an entire year. And, but now it's, we make a couple of percent and it fluctuates and.
Well, it's making a lot of percent, it's pacing more than we expected, so I
Well,
guess.
we have a lot more money in the bank. And we're able to move money into that.
That's a good point.
The tax commissioner, Chuck Barlow, he runs that program for us. And so he looks at that every day and kind of decides what today's cash receipts are into our normal accounts, how much can he move over, how much has to stay because tomorrow's a payday, or we're paying the water bill, or there's some big hitter out there that's going to suck up a bunch.
Is it
And
a
then
sweep thing where we go out and then pull that back in?
It's not automatic, no.
Okay.
So we manage that manually every day, if that's the right word.
So it is, but it is low, it's at 31% of where, I guess, it was expected, I think probably based on last year's number. Are we seeing probably lower interest rates though? Is that kind of, or do you think that we're doing a lot more capital projects this year, so maybe there's just less cash that we're moving out to stuff?
Yeah, I think it started at the end of last year when we had, a cash carryover,
A surplus.
right? So that's continued this year. So, I'm sure there's swings and misses, but overall, I think we're doing a pretty good job spending. And, with cash being up a little bit, at least in earnings tax, it's helped us along the way.
Okay.
So, again, what would improve that is some type of rolling disbursement, cash flow planning out of the auditor's office, so where we would know, hey, next week, here's what we think we're going to pay, and 2 weeks from now, here's,
And maximize how much cash I can keep in there for the buffer week.
Exactly, and every day counts. And so, while something like that won't always be perfect, at least when the big expenditures that are coming up, that it's very helpful. So, it's something to think about.
Okay. I actually skipped into page 11, but if you guys had anything between there, go for it.
No, great job.
Yeah, I would just note so on page 2, we've got the different recreation keys.
Yes.
So we've got a lot of these different, keys for swim passes, swim lessons, park rental, concessions. But we also have a miscellaneous one, because we added a lot of those other ones later, I think. But anyways, essentially though, we're seeing the miscellaneous one, a pretty big jump. I mean, it's at 379% of where it was expected to be. But then we're seeing a lot of the other ones that aren't necessarily broken out. So I'm not sure if that is the auditor's office, if that's the rec department, why that's not being broken out to so that we kind of know where some of those funds are coming from. It's just something to
It's
note.
almost like they're under allocated and need to be brought down the line.
I think so. It's what it seems
Yeah.
like. So just something to note.
Yep, hang tight. Just taking notes, guys, sorry.
Yeah, take your time.
Okay. If there's no other comments, we can jump to page 11. This was more of a comment. Now that we know the health department is going to be managed a little bit differently, specifically they're going to manage their own money, and the city will be essentially just responsible for giving them the employees in the building, is the short story. Is next year are we going to show the health department grants fund in that fund, or would we have a different way of tracking that, Mr. Maloney? Because I know that they're going to be responsible for their money, particularly their revenue. That's why they would have their own, yes, I guess it would still be a fund, but maybe it wouldn't be. How would that be tracked in 2021?
From what I know, it would almost have to be done the same way we're doing it now. And we're just kind of moving the responsibility to managing that for the health commissioners,
right,
or the management of the health department to take a more active role. And the quick answer would come from the state of Ohio as to a recommendation as to how should we set up the funds and or sub-accounts and all those kinds of things. What would be legal and what would be more efficient.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote myself a note that I wasn't at all trying to be funny, but I said, will this matter? Because we're trending exactly
right
7/12 of what we expected. And so we're either very good at our income estimates, or there is something that is a fixed income generation that maybe I don't understand. And then I ask myself, will that matter going forward?
Right. I don't know the answer.
Okay.
I would guess that it really won't matter unless legally we have to do something.
All right.
So were you looking at Fund 15? Is that what you're?
Yes, I was.
Okay, gotcha.
And so the question I'm going to go ask Jim really is, give me a little more insight into what it is, but then I want to kind of just know for myself the will it matter tomorrow type of question. And I think the answer is yes, it will, because we will still be managing both the income and then how much we just give as a stipend to Mr. Williamson. I think.
Yeah,
but I don't know that.
So, I mean, the way that so one thing that we are going to have to look at, if we look at birth certificate revenue and I think food service license revenue.
Guys, what he's talking about is early on, you'd see that in page 1 and 2.
Yeah, so, birth certificate revenue is on page 1, and then is food license there too? Yeah, food license on 1. So we have 67, or expected, actually let's just look at year-to-date. So right now, year-to-date for birth and death certificates, $37,000, and then food service license, $68,000. Just a plug for anybody, if you have a baby, make sure you get your birth certificate at the Norwood Health Department and not any other health department. You get it quicker, you get it faster, but also that revenue comes to the city instead of going somewhere else. But long story short is that $37,000, $68,000 that we've received so far, and it's expected to be definitely higher by the end of the year. We're probably not going to get that revenue in our general fund next year. It's going to probably go into the health fund because they're probably going to keep the revenue that they generate there. And because we actually created a key, I'm not even sure exactly what number it is. It hasn't showed up on the reports yet. But there's going to be a key that's going to be created where they kind of keep it and they pay the health commissioner out of that plus some other things. So we won't have those revenues. So we could probably expect a drop of around probably $130,000 in general fund revenue just because of that. But we're also going to lose some expenses too because we won't be paying the health commissioner. So it's probably going to balance out.
My understanding on the revenue side is that City of Cincinnati and Hamilton County, due to the pandemic, those offices were closed a lot more than our offices were. And so they were actually recommending to come to Norwood to get their stuff. And so that's why it's a little bit higher than expected. So I don't know if that's going to happen next year or not. It might come back down to normal levels.
Yeah. We'll see if that pandemic baby boom happens or not.
Pandemic baby boom. Thanks, James.
You're welcome.
And I had another bunch of pages I skipped and went to page 20, but really don't want to stop you guys from.
Yeah, I mean, I would just look at the revenue for the street fund. I mean, one question I would have, because I know that John Murphy's been on this more, but I was surprised to see that we basically have only had $130 in street opening revenue so far. And I don't know what traditionally we've normally charged in that, but I just, knowing that he's on that more than probably potentially has been in the past, I was definitely expecting to see a little bit more there, so.
For where?
Street openings for, it's 02, then 48282.
Okay.
But anyway, it's just something to note. I mean, I would say it'd be good to hear where that revenue goes if it doesn't go into that queue.
Thanks.
Yep.
Okay. Yep. So I noted that there was, for account 50, remember not fund, but account 50, there was the state grant, which also flowed underwater. It just says state grant or non-departmental revenue underwater. So Mr. Maloney, I don't know if you have the accounts. You don't. Okay, it's more of an auditor thing, I suppose. So I put a general question out to ask about that, and I'll follow up. But really, it's just to try to understand for myself, why is it classified under water? I think it's probably good reason. I just don't know it.
Yeah, and it's really just classified as an expected revenue. I mean, there's no revenue for that yet.
Well, exactly. That's what I found strange. That's why I took notice.
Yeah.
There's nothing there. So I didn't know if it was just a big lump that I'm supposed to be expecting, or if it has anything to do with the fact that if I go down to the water area, I do have revenue, and that revenue seemed to be adding up between waterworks and sewer charges.
Yeah, actually, I think you're right. I think it is they coded it there, just in that 4,000, but what they should have done was, actually, I don't know exactly how they should have done it, but long story short is, I think if you look at the total for Fund 50.
Exactly. So that's why I circled down here, and I was like, there's probably not a coincidence that they add up to that. So
yeah, that's probably what it is. Good call.
Okay, so I think that I'll find out, but we think that what that represents is the sum of sewer charges, waterworks, a tiny little bit for this thing called water insurance, but it's a very small number, $13,000. The sum of all those things is what we're pacing against this target of 5.1 million, which is kind of in line, 53% versus 58%. That's just weird that it's called state grant. It doesn't.
Well, it's the fourth, so it's 50-0000-40,000. So I think it's just because they just coded it as the. Okay. And I think state grants is showing up for some reason, but.
All right. Well, I'll let me make note just so I know for next time.
Yeah. No, it'd be great though if in the future if we can get it coded by line so that we don't have to do that calculation. Okay, and that sewerage, just so you know, that sewerage charge, what that is. So a couple of years ago, we actually had an issue where our sewer fund kept having more money in it, right? And it turns out that we were supposed to be taking a 7% cut of the sewer fees. MSD basically lets us keep 7% because we were billing for it. So when you see that sewerage charge under charges for services, that's basically MSD paying the water department to bill the sewer. So that's why we get, it's $243,000 so far this year, but that's what that is.
hang tight, guys, please. Cool. Still old school here, writing everything down. I want to combine my last three comments or my last three highlights together, and they all have to do with the TIF. James, I know you and I spoke just kind of casually about that before, but the first thing that catches my eye is that we're trending. So if we target, we're trending down. We're trending below what we were thought we were going to be. I guess we'll call it earning, but earning really isn't the right word when I think of like this TIFs. And so I guess my question to Tim, if you can answer it, is that just timing? Because in my head, we have a pretty known tax increment or the incremental value.
Right. I would think it would be exactly that.
Yeah, and we know the rate
Right.
is probably the same from the start. So
Right.
the pod at which we're probably borrowing from should be relatively fixed.
Well, and no new TIF projects this year, so when
You haven't
we,
increased the
when
increment,
we
so.
budgeted the numbers, it should be right on, so it would just be a little tiny.
Yeah, and I put it out and I'll ask about it, but I wanted to make sure I'm not completely off base, and it's because that just kindergarten math in my head would be say we should be exactly what we thought by the end of the year. It should just be timing. James, comments from your understanding of TIFs?
I mean, that's likely what that is.
So I just lumped all of these together, the Central Park, the Cornerstone. I just said, I'm not too worried about it, I guess, but I'll check with Jim to make sure that what I think is happening is actually happening.
Yeah.
So that was all me. I know I did a lot of talking. Are you guys cool with revenue? And thank you, Mr. Maloney, for kind of touching on August.
I think you covered it, thank you.
Okay. I took notes. I have 4 follow-ups that I'll make, and I'll make sure it's in that our responses are communicated to you guys, if I couldn't answer them here. Next, after the revenue outlook, we're going to do expense report versus budget. Kind of just as it sounds, what I wanted to do is kind of say to ourselves, well, this is a nice report because it has our budgeted amount, it has what we've spent to date, and it has encumbrances. Obviously, that's really important for us to know what we've already tied ourselves up to, so we can't count that. And then we arrive at this unencumbered balance, which we know from Jim Stith's education purposes is kind of like available. Same thing, I just found things that I thought were either a large enough dollar away from pacing, or were just interesting in and of themselves that I wanted to talk about. But I know, Chris, this is probably areas where you want to say to yourselves, okay, capital projects, and are we high? Are we running hot? Or running cold? What do we need to do about that? We have a few months, and we know we're, as a practice, not excited about making any new POs in December, so that gives us a very limited amount of months to actually go start projects or kick things off and tie ourselves up. So, page 1. First thing I saw is the mayor's office. Essentially, we are pacing a lot less than I expected. I imagine that's because we've had a headcount departure. One of the assistants isn't working there. I don't know how much of an effect that would have, but maybe that's why we're pacing a little under expectations. And then I wondered, I just wrote a note to myself as we consider 2021, is it worth having, what's the cost equivalency besides, I guess, benefits costs of having 1 full-time versus 2 part-time? I don't know if that was a decision we wanted to have. I don't remember why we set it up that way.
I think it was the request of the mayor. I mean,
The mayor wanted it that way?
It was his preference, yeah.
That's surprising to have. It seems like that would be continuity, like you're constantly
Other
having.
than the obvious, full-time employees, benefits.
And
health
Yeah.
insurance and.
Well, that's what he kind of explained it, was to when I heard it was, he was talking about having the part-timers versus full-time for the benefits.
Okay. For me, I just want one person, but, okay. But we are spending less, and I guess it's just the head count, because I didn't really know where else that would be coming out of.
Yeah, and probably, I mean, just, there was delays in hiring, right?
That's a great point,
And
too.
when we approved the appropriations, we didn't know exactly when the hiring would happen, so could be part of it.
Yep, so running a little cold there, which is fine. It's obviously good. I skipped a few of the other departments' personnel-related items, but I didn't want to stop you guys from looking at anything if you wanted to. Specifically, I skipped over Mayor's Corps. Law Department, I know that we're having a conversation at the committee as a whole, so that's another reason why I wanted to kind of skip over some of these salary or expenses, just because I know a lot of that's going to be brought up at the committee of the whole meeting coming up in 2 days.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know if this, I mean, because the law department's at 40%, right, of where, expected to be. 40, well, they're at 40% instead of the 57% where we might expect them, and a few percent, whatever. So I'm not sure exactly why they're so low, because the law department's very predictable. I mean, TA's been here for a couple of years now in his role, and the other two are predictable. So, but I mean, it is what it is. Like, I don't think it's too concerning. And the good thing is, at the end of the year, we can always adjust it and move things to other places if we're short anywhere. So.
Yep, that was another reason I kind of skipped over, because I
Yeah.
felt like head count was head count. But I just didn't want to stop anybody from talking about that if you want to. So a massive big jump forward if we skip over that. I stopped at the contractual services section because I wanted to look into the areas where we're farming out any work. And is that the smart thing? Is that the right way to be spending it? And are we spending on our contractors in the right way? Do we want to be having them do something different? Where I thought it was a little bit either I didn't understand it or it was just too vague. I'm sure not intentional, but it just says professional services, and that's where we're pacing really hot.
And for which department?
Huh?
Which department are you looking at?
This is account number 72.
So that'd be the, well, it's the 70, well, right, but what overall?
Or one general fund.
No, but what page you on?
Page 7,
Page 7, okay. So,
after the police.
okay, so you're talking about at the top you have the earnings tax office, and then at the bottom you've got civil service commission, it looks like. So which,
I wonder if we're not on this. Maybe it's just a format thing. I printed these out.
where are you on? You're looking at, okay. Gotcha, okay, so we're looking at two different versions of the report. I'm looking at current year only, so let me pull that up just so that we're looking at the same thing. Sorry about that.
Nope. Probably I didn't say it.
It's totally
Say
fine.
it properly.
Okay, page 7.
I have the current year only if you want me to use that.
No, this is
Okay. So yeah, so it says professional services, and we budgeted 3,000, but it's at like 44,000. So that just seemed abnormally more than expected. And I wonder if it's either things are flowing to that because we have other elements that are pacing really low. So I wonder if like things like contractual services, police, or subscriptions, or seminars, or anything like that is actually where those expenses are supposed to be coded to, but are all following into this general professional services line. So that's a question I'm going to have out for Jim, unless anybody else kind of knows an answer there.
No, I mean, I don't know, if I had to guess, it would probably be something to do maybe with training for new officers, but I really have, yeah, I think asking Jim would be a good idea.
I'm hoping it's just categorization, but yeah, I'll check on that. Okay. Then I think the next one that I thought was interesting was we have capital projects related, in this case, related to fire. We had 33 of the $320,000 that we had budgeted. We've spent or signed ourselves up for almost all of that. Only 33,000 is left over. I presume that that is just roof and the repair work associated with that, because I know the mayor's always talking about how that's progressing. So the fact that it's exhausted or signed or earmarked for almost all that we were budgeting for, I guess that's all just the roof.
Yeah, just looking at the encumbrances, yeah, it's probably what that is. All of their roofing stuff is coming out of their capital key.
Yeah, so if Chief McCabe were here, I'd imagine if I asked him, which I would have asked him at the kind of like the big three, what are the things you wanted done in 2020, or are they getting done? I'd hope he'd say that was probably item 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, priority 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and all, and that's moving along. In the same light, capital projects related to street. Again, we had $172,000 set aside. We have spent $125,000. I guess the comment here is that's great that we've been doing stuff, but there's nothing more encumbered. So that means we have like $46,000 left to do the work that we still want to do. That seems too low. So I'm wondering if the money will be coming out of another area. And then I was going through trying to find that. Or do they come out of things like streets contractual, streets materials? You guys don't have any comment?
Okay, no, I'm just looking up. So you're on page...
Well, and unfortunately, I can do it on the current year. I was using
No.
the
I mean,
expense.
I've got this pulled up. So you're on page 11? Is that...
Yes, I am.
Okay. And then, so you're looking at the street capital projects. We budgeted the 172,000.
That's right. We spent 120.
125, right? And 98 was this.
So I guess it's just like an ask, maybe to myself, to say, well, in July we spent a whole bunch of money, 100 out of the 172, to do work. But what comes out of that capital projects money, and then what comes out of the material supplies, contractual services from streets, streets fixed charges, XYZ, because it just seems like 46K is not enough to do any substantial work.
Gotcha. Okay, now I understand what you're saying. Yeah, so we put a specific amount in for, and I'll have to look at the capital improvement plan about why we put that specific amount in, but it'll be there. But we put that amount in, right? So they did the 98,000. They've got the 46 left. That can be combined though with the state highway fund if we're working on a state highway, or the street fund in general, just if we're working anywhere else. So I mean, it can kind of be tag teamed. It can also be tag teamed with the community development block grant to do a street if it's in a lower income area. So it's still good, but yeah, I mean, we can't pay cash to repave a street with 46,000, but it can.
Yeah, I guess maybe either if you can answer with your history of this, or I can just ask Jim, why wouldn't we put all of that into the street fund?
So because these are dollars, the street fund are dollars that are, I mean, the street fund's from the gas tax, right? So the general fund is from everywhere else that we get revenue. And so historically, the city has not spent general fund money on streets, and that's really a big issue. But we've been kind of trying to change that and put more and more street stuff in the general fund so that we have more money for it. So
okay.
It's there just carved out so that we can kind of reserve it and say, before we do anything else, we've got some money here for the streets. So when we do have opportunities.
Exhaust that first and then
Exactly.
go to any kind. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I think you answered probably the next question. I had a similar comment for state highway capital projects, but I think it's exactly the same thing. that this is just the 54,000 that's in the general fund, but can be exhausted and combined with grants or other.
Where do you see, what specific?
Yep, so looking at expense account report with month to date, page 18, state highway capital projects.
Perfect, okay. Yes, I mean, and again, that's, we estimated, we authorized the city that you can spend $54,000 this year for capital projects on the state highway fund. I mean, it's really the city, I guess, it's really the administration, I guess, kind of determining, working with the streets committee that Mr. Braden chairs. But it's really the city determining, I mean, how do they want to spend it? And the good thing is on the state highway fund, if they don't spend it, then it rolls over to next year. But the money's there, so it doesn't go away. It has to stay in that fund.
There you go, John.
Cool, thanks.
Using the same report, page 20, I saw, this is a small dollar, but I just kind of didn't know what it was. It's called drug law enforcement. What I found particularly interesting was, I was trying to kind of tag it in, and it's $30,000 planned, of which we've spent $4,000. So I kind of wanted to understand what we mean or what we're putting in or having in our minds for drug law enforcement. And are we spending it in line with what we expected to spend it to? And if not, should we be putting that somewhere else? I probably would ask Chief Kramer, so I'll follow up with him directly, unless you guys kind of have any history here of, you do? Okay.
Yeah, I can give a little bit. So this year, remember, we're looking at the expense side of it.
Yes.
And the revenue side I'm pulling up right now myself. So our drug fund, essentially, we get money from like asset seizures, and there's other things that, it's Fund 11 and Fund 12. Both of those kind of work hand in hand. And so, anyways, long story short about it is that the police department, they can build that up if they want. They can use it for certain things. A lot of times they've used it in the past for things like the Norwood, the police night out that they do, I think in July. There's been a lot of events that have been canceled that they might have used some of it on. And in the past too, they've helped with like payments on, maybe the first payment on a police cruiser, they'll pay for the drug fund. So, I guess I wouldn't worry, at least, it's good to know like what their plan is for it, but if they don't spend it, it's also good to have there for the future in case we need it for something.
Okay. I still am gonna probably reach out to Chief Kramer and ask him what he's thinking about it. I wonder if that's an area, if it doesn't have a pronoun to it, if that's an area maybe when we talk about outreach or, things in our own community to build relationships with the police, if that's an kind of unallocated pot of money. That is not to say that it is unallocated, it's just that I haven't talked to Chief Kramer to understand what that is.
Yeah, and then the one thing I would note on those funds is that there are some pretty specific things that they can use it. Like they can't use it to. The word is always supplant. They basically can't use it to replace expenditures that would have happened in the police department, but they can do it to supplement, where they can like do something special. They can, buy something above and beyond what the normally they would do. And again, they have used it at times to help us with like cruisers, especially when we get like the SUVs, they're a little bit more expensive. So, but unfortunately we can't just take that money and then use it to, improve a park, for example.
Yep.
But yeah, I definitely recommend you reaching out to Chief Kramer. Everything I just told you are things that I've heard from him and the auditor.
It was just an idea that came out, like, hey, it doesn't feel like that this has an easily identifiable pronoun or specific use for it.
Sure.
Is that open money?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, noting it is small dollar though, so it wasn't something to get too particularly excited about. Those were all my Post-its, but I really don't want to be the only one looking at it, and I know.
So for me, the big thing that I think that we need to be looking at is or at least one of the things, but it's the public lands and buildings key, or the public lands and building, the key's there. So we've got the capital improvement key, it's 01, 0911, and 7600. So that's on page 13.
Got it.
Yep. So, we appropriated, $1.1 million for capital improvements to public lands and buildings, and that's just a very broad key to basically almost anything that the city owns, we can essentially use it to help improve or fix. So we've only, our year-to-date expenditure is $155,000, and we've only got $17,000 in encumbrances. So I think we really need to be asking, that's $965,000 that's unencumbered. What are the plans, and pulling up, basically what do they have planned for that? What is their goal? Are they planning on not using it? So it would just be interesting to hear.
I'll probably ask that to the mayor and John Murphy, Safety Service Director Murphy, first, unless anyone had a...
No, I mean, that makes sense. We put money in there for, things like just replacing the city hall roof, repairing just damage in council chambers that got repaired last year, things like that. So it'll be interesting to hear what their plans are.
The safety lane roof would probably fall under that too, right?
I'm sorry?
The safety lane roof would probably fall under that too?
You mean like if there's things that need to be done there to... I mean, it would likely, it would be eligible for sure.
Yeah.
I haven't heard of any plans though.
Thanks, James.
Yes.
Anything else? Okay. I will be, well, before we get to like the big three remaining needs, I did say that we would open it up for 5-minute sections for community comments now that we've done top line and bottom. We have one person who came up today.
Thank you, Pastor Sonny James at 1830 Hopkins Avenue. First and foremost, I want to acknowledge the truth, which is a lot of focus apparently has gone into this. I want to also say, with all due respect, that I feel very confident and comfortable that we have competent individuals continually working on this, like our auditor, Jim Stith, and I believe Mr. Maloney has every good intention to help you all as you continue to process working towards our financial current status as well as our future. Now, with that being said, though, I want to make sure that it seems like as we move forward as a community and as a city, one thing that we continuously leave out is our planning phases or our lack of focus for what's to come in terms of us as a community or the needs of the community in terms of just more hands-on. And when we look and see what's going on around our nation, one thing that I still miss in here that I would like to personally see specifically spelled out is economic inclusion. When we talk about finances, we talk about budget, one area, contractual services. I think if you look around other municipalities around the country, even those that are running for the White House, you can see there's a continuous trend and a shift. But yet in Norwood, I think if we take a serious look, it's either that we don't believe we have individuals that can help fill these roles, or we just don't care to pursue them. So one of the things that I would like for us to do is to get away from that negative myth by just changing how we do things. So I want to challenge you all in closing to really look at that, guys, and look at ways that we can do different. Now, here's the one thing I'm going to say, though. If you should decide to start looking at economic inclusion and programming and things like that, don't always just go to the existing groups that have always been highlighted and given those opportunities, because that ends up boxing us right back to status quo. So look out amongst us, and I'm sure, because I know of a few, minority-based organizations that serve our community well. And I think everybody now deserves an opportunity, as opposed to just focusing even our interest on talking to the big three, because quite frankly, even within the big three, we still have some protocol that kind of keeps things not on a level playing field. Chief McCabe, I will go to bat for every step of the way. I believe that was a tremendous positive step that we've made as a community. But, you know, a handful of people can't just change our old status quo, and it really starts with you all. We have things that we have going on in our community now that were approved by former administrations, but as you can see, and I even challenged you, Chair, on some of those things, and to this date, those issues have still not come forward with an answer. And it shows that in some areas we don't put enough attention, when we set these things in motion. You all have an opportunity with the budget to actually write those things in. But again, when you write them in, don't write them in with the same organizations and the same leadership that we continue to highlight, because then you just continue status quo. So we've got competent people. I know, and I'll take a page out of Mr. Braden's book at last councilman meeting on some issues. He said, "Hey, man, I trust all you guys. I know we've got great people here, and I believe that. But we've got to do things when we set the policy." So unless there are any questions, that's really all I have to say. Thank you guys for hearing me, and I pray you hear the heart of the community as we grow in more diversity. God bless.
Thanks, Pastor. I wrote in the big three, the administration 2020 remaining needs. That was just something I also kind of challenged our team, myself, to make sure that where we could, we were thinking about the immediate needs of our department heads, and are we taking on the projects that we set out at the beginning of setting plan to take on. COVID obviously put a pause on some of those things, but we have these remaining months. So I know they're not physically here, but I'm going to personally make sure that you see the responses of my request of specifically those four guys, both fire and police chief, safety service director, and public works, making sure that, I'm just going to ask them an open-ended question. You saw how we set the plan. I know things kind of took a little pause, but are those 2020 priorities being met or have a line of sight to being met before the end of November? And if there's things that they are either worried about or haven't taken action on, we can use this forum to highlight it. So that's kind of the intent there. Hopefully, maybe if when things kind of people feel more comfortable getting in large groups, we can kind of have more of a presence to be a little bit more public and vocal about are those needs being met. But I'll ask it offline, and I'll make sure the four of us are in the know for that.
Yeah. So yeah, I did want to go back to the capital real quick. Public lands and buildings, capital improvements.
Yep.
So we had allocated. I kind of want to just go through this list here to see. Just talk about this to see what we'd really like to push the administration on to get done. But we in our capital improvement plan,
This
we have
is page 13, guys.
yeah, and I've actually got the plan 2 that was sent to us, or
The current one?
yeah. So I've got it all broken out here as well. So anyway, so on the capital improvements plan, public lands and buildings, a little bit over $1 million. Like I said, I'd like to go through this list. So we put $30,000 for new city website mobile app. I think that we probably put that in the wrong key. It probably should have been under contractual, but so they probably took care of that.
Yep.
Replacing city hall roof system, it was 150. I think I'm not sure if that came out of or if we've hit that yet. Has that work been completed? I couldn't remember if they were doing it or not. I knew they were talking.
He said working. He seemed like he was talking present tense when at the administration report, but I'll ask.
On the city hall, on the roof, okay.
Yep.
So it's $90,000 to replace city hall windows. I know there hasn't been any work there. The question will be, are they still, that's very much needed. So hopefully we can start working on that. Repairing brickwork in Tuck Point City Hall. they definitely are repairing the brickwork in the front. The question is, are we sealing the rest of the building? Not sure. Replacing, let's see here. They got front door at City Hall, 15,000. So definitely want to see if they're still planning on doing that. Let's see here. City Hall lot. They wanted to do something with the City Hall parking lot. Curious if they still plan on that. City Hall repainting exteriors. It looks like sealing around the windows and stuff. They've got.
Well, I mean, what I could do, sorry, not to cut you off, but when I send out my list, I have that report here and kind of the detail. I can just put the detail and highlight in yellow what I think adds up to the 155,000 spent to date, and then the balance is the rest of the $850,000.
Sure.
And just say, of that 850, here's your list of what we thought we were going to do, how much is realistically on your plans to get done, and I can report back to the group.
Yeah, no, that's okay. That's fine. And then we put 140,000 for emergency storm sewer repair. So that just kind of reminds me too. I mean, I'd like to know too from them. So I really would have loved the mayor to be here, but I really want to know what the again, where are we at with Elm Avenue, the study, and what are we? I mean, we need to be thinking about where these funds are going to come from, because this is not going to be a cheap fix, and
right.
for especially the sewer part of it, especially. And so, and maybe some of that comes. Maybe we take 500,000 from public lands and buildings, or 300,000. I'm not sure, but we definitely need to be thinking about it, because as soon as we get the plan together and we know what we can do to stop it, I want to hit the ground running, because I mean they deserve it. I mean, Ward 1 deserves it, and it's been 40 years too long. So
It's a fantastic comment. I'll specifically ask that question in my lineup.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that, because the response I've got is we're still waiting on the response from MSD to kind of move forward, to even do a study, to do a plan with them. And I think having some money set aside to kind of lower the burden going forward and kind of jump right into it, like James said, would be awesome. And it would show the residents that we're actually serious about it, and we're not just going to say we're serious about it. But having some of that money moved over, if possible, would be quite beneficial for that cause.
Well, heck, man, if they don't spend, they even spend half of the 800 grand, then that's 400 grand that we can earmark for let's say on January 1st, the results of the study comes back. We roll over for half of the unencumbered amount.
Yeah.
You can set that aside
Well, I mean,
specifically for
what I would
the
like to
storm
do,
repair.
and I'm sure Mr. Bonzo probably agrees here with his comments, is maybe even try to get them to commit to it now rather than go on a spending spree and then kind of say later,
I follow.
next year we'll see.
Well, this will be the mayor's opportunity to kind of lay out of that list, which is on the report. We all see it.
Yeah.
How much is going to get done, and then I'll know the balance or expected balance after that, and I can let you know. Hey, it's 400,000. Okay, that's probably. I know nothing about sewer systems, but sounds like a lot of money to at least get things kicking off as soon as we get the results.
Yeah.
Or there's $40,000 left. Well, that's probably not enough, so we got to shift some money around for 2021. We'll know that answer after response.
Yeah.
It's a great question, though. Thanks for bringing it
There
up.
is an account kind of set up for the Elm Avenue sewer project on, I think it's page 57, account 59, where there's nothing in it, so I would like to see
Yeah, well,
something there.
there's nothing, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think that was intentional because the results of the study hadn't been completed, so we didn't want to tie ourselves up for something where we didn't know the answer to.
Yeah, well, I mean, like I said, and I think James was alluding to, I think having a little bit of money there in that account would kind of go a long way with the residents of saying, hey, this is here waiting. It's probably gonna be more than this, but this is kind of like a down payment on it. A commitment from us right away.
Okay, just kind of a visual representation of your intent.
And then kind of an update on the administration reports of where we're at, like with grant finding. Are we looking at low interest loans, kind of a deal? There's no reason we can't be doing all that right now while we wait on MSD to kind of give us a response. So thank you for bringing that up, James.
Oh, yeah, no, it's my pleasure. So that Fund 30, I don't think that Fund 39 was created recently. I think it's been in, I'm pulling up a prior year report right now.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Oh, gotcha, okay. Well, it looks like that fund is used for various things, but essentially, they just changed the label of it. And it looks like they are preparing for that Elm Avenue, so that's good to hear. Oh, actually, no, I lied. For that Fund 39, it's called Elm Avenue Sewer Project, at least that's what the total of it says. And it was there last year too, so I bet you that thing's probably been sitting in, that fund has been sitting there for 2 decades.
Yeah, I mean, probably at least since they looked at it early 2000s.
Yeah, so anyways. I don't think, I just wanted to say that I don't think seeing Fund 39 with Elm Avenue Sewer Project listed on it is any indication that they're actually planning on working on it right now. Not that they don't want to, but I'm just saying, I think that fund has been there for a while, so.
Yeah, and I mean, I personally, as a resident of Ward 1, and not only that, but the representative would think that it would be a little bit more serious to see a substantial amount of money put into that fund and move forward with that.
Yep. First step first, let's see how much we really think is going to be available, and then
Yeah.
it's a natural follow-on to say, okay, knowing this, here's the action step.
Yeah.
Cool, guys. I'll make sure that we have that number in mind for the next meeting.
Yeah, I would like to know too, if we can, for like parks, capital improvements. COVID hit, obviously, so we weren't able to get as much done as we wanted, but we were able to save quite a bit, and we're actually looking at the Millcrest Stairs as one of the projects next that Clint's looking at, getting bids for. We already got a couple, but getting them tore out, we're gonna save a little bit of the money that was allocated for it and kind of expected to be spent on it, so we're looking at kind of saving, right around $12,500 there, or a little bit more than that. And then we save money on the bleachers we got repaired. We're under on the, the Lisa Tanner Memorial Park project. And we do have that $27,000 grant that we got that we're gonna use at Hunter Park.
Yeah.
Which I would like to try to use a little bit more of that unencumbered capital improvement budget for Hunter in 2020. Then we got the Burwood money coming out, and then one thing I would like to look into, hopefully we can get it done, if not, early spring next year in 2021, if it would roll over, is the lights for all the Waterworks baseball fields, which right now we got expected around $125,000, which not sure if it'll be that, but I would like to start looking into bids and quotes for that job as well.
So I actually have this is just a little bit of like a light bulb to connect Parks Committee to this committee. I have an email out to Glenn, as I talked about at the Parks meeting, to say, what's the timing of actually digging dirt for the drainage. It'd be really cool to have, if it's possible, and if it's too burdensome, forget it, but it'd be really cool to have the parks line up a calendar from September to December for realistically, of that list, what can get done when.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to stop at December, it could carry on, obviously, but for the next 6 months, Clint, Mr. Zimmerman, Mr. Murphy, can you lay out the next 6 months, realistically giving yourself buffers at each project, and then I can tie in the money to those things, and then we can look at December and say, are we on track or not?
I like that, I can work on that for you.
Yeah, if you bring the next Parks meeting, or the general council, or this committee, whatever, just having that list, we can just start tying in 13K, Burwood, 27K is how much we have to fund. Do we need more, do we need less?
Yeah, so I mean, that is a fun where I would like to kind of do like a mad dash to the end of the year and try to see what we can get
That'd be
done.
super cool. We would just make it very easy.
Yeah, I mean,
for us
that's something that's neglected as well, so I would like to kind of see if we can get as much done as we can before we go into 2021 and kind of spend, December, January, February, planning out 2021's park projects so we can get them done hopefully sooner, barring any other pandemic outbreak. And
Okay, so you'll be able to, you can talk to Clint about getting that list the next 6 months?
yeah, I'll start working on that now.
That'll be great. All right, that is points 1 through 4. I actually thought that would take longer, so we're slightly ahead of schedule. I don't want to stop. We got any comments?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to say a few more if I can. So like I said, I just have a question. Do we know, we know that this thing was planned like almost a month in advance, so, the mayor was invited, the safety service director was invited, if that's correct. Have you heard back why that they weren't able to attend, or we weren't able to get somebody from the administration that was able to attend?
I know that Jim,
Well, I mean, I'd say not.
yeah,
Jim,
he
I'd say
he couldn't make it, and he explained why. No, not specifically.
Okay, no, that's fine. I mean, it's just, if we're calling this our, biannual, budget review, and we really want to make sure that we kind of hit these things and try to really get an understanding, I'd hope that, like, in the future, that we could get one of them here to, discuss with us. I know Mr. Murphy's really busy. I know the mayor's got a lot of stuff going on, but, maybe we can get some dates from them in the future and say, look, like, when are you available? Because it would just help on some of these conversations to kind of have that understanding.
I hear you. I think when I send my request out, which is one of the action items, I think I'll flip the script. I think I told them the date based on our availability, and it's a lot more useful if they're here, so I think I'll do a better job of asking them, and then we'll pick a date. So we'll commit to making ourselves a little bit more flexible and kind of go the other way around. If we want them here, we need them here. I won't just tell them when we're having it. I'll ask them to give me some dates. So a fair point. Can't say why they're here now, but that might have something to do with it, because, I gave them just a few weeks' notice and gave them a date. So that, it's probably not the best way to go about this.
Yeah, and then the other thing, just looking at I'd really like to look at the Parks and Playground Capital Improvement Key too. So we appropriated $380,000 there. We've only spent $22,000 so far. Now we do have encumbrances of $85,000, but that still leaves $271,000 unencumbered. So Mr. Kelch brought up, like, when I look at what we were thinking on that, so replacing the lights at all 3 Waterworks baseball fields, $125,000 is what we kind of just roughly estimated. And we were trying to get that project done last year. So, I mean, it's been on the burner for a while. Master electric panel at Waterworks, $15,000. The stairs at Millcrest Park. So it would be good, whether it's the Parks Committee or whoever, but it'd be good really to find out kind of what that plan is, and just addressing it, because right now, while we do have a little bit extra money at the city, I just don't want to see it all, go down. I don't want to see it all just spent on salaries or just on services. Like, I really want to get some of these capital things done that can get done, because we're not always going to have good times. So we might as well get the stuff done so that, 3 decades from now, the kids that are playing baseball at Waterworks Park, they're going to have lights on that field, and they're going to be able to practice and play there, because we made sure that money was there and that project got done. So
Yeah, and I'm working really hard to get all these things done. Like I said, COVID hit, we had to kind of slow down, but we're going to get these done. What's your, I can close out of mine, what's your say for the stairs budget?
we roughly estimated 60,000, but these
60?
were 60,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, all of these it wasn't that we had people come out. I mean, it could be 80,000, it could be 40.
Yeah, so we got 60 budget for it. The plan that Clint likes, that I like, that we're looking at is tear out for $8,500, and we're gonna open up that trail with volunteer work and group like that. So with that project, I'm including that project in what's spent already, which is not, I guess, update on what's on there. But with that project done, we will have spent $73,100, or $73,100 of total projects that were budgeted or estimated to be $130,000. So we're coming in right around half of that estimated budget of actual spend. Since we did $17,500 on the bleachers, both sets of bleachers, we were able to repair, with the hope that we can maybe plan and budget for a complete redo, tear out, overhaul in 4 to 6 years on those. Then doing the Lee Tanner Moore Park overhaul, we're still under on that. And like I said, we got things we want to do is the lights at Waterworks Baseball Fields. We got $125K kind of earmarked for that, which we don't know yet what that's going to cost. But we're working towards that. And then with the Hunter Park, we got the $27,000 grant, looking to use about 30 to 40K to kind of renovate that park with that grant fund, since it is a pretty large park.
I mean, you just listed out like 6 things. That's what makes,
Yeah.
and I'm so glad you're doing it. So thank you for stepping up and committing to it. That's what makes laying out that timeline or that schedule so valuable. And that's a bit of a shame on my part that I haven't made that connection until just now. We probably need to start marrying up these different committees for things like that. Hey, put it on the schedule. It makes talking about the money so much easier.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I might be calling him about Burwood, because that was something that, I've been trying to get on the schedule for, but we're doing it on an individual basis, which is probably silly. It's been silly for a while. So
Yeah.
having just a very clear layout of what they're expecting to do takes a lot of the guesswork out of it.
Yeah, and I mean, that's, when it's all said and done, if we can get everything done that I kind of want to have Parks Committee do, that'll be 1, 2, 3. That'll be 5 big projects. That'll be 2 parks completely renovated, lights at all the waterworks baseball fields, the ever so dangerous Millcrest stairs removed, which is a pending lawsuit, in my opinion. And then we have the bleachers done. I mean, these are things, waterworks, obviously we're keying there a little bit, the bleachers, that park, the lights there. I mean, that's one of our major sports plexes in Norwood, one of our premier sports plexes. And one of the things I'd like to see on maybe next year's capital improvements budget is redoing the fencing there. We're trying to get some Reds Community Fund grant money there, and getting that done. And then working up towards Doral and stuff, and want to get some adopt a park kind of programs together over this winter to kind of plan for next spring to help with some of that money, offset some of that cost. As well as any grants Mr. Perry could find that the city can definitely benefit from in parks. And then definitely getting that plan together and getting this plan together for the rest of the year, but working that same model for 2020 as well.
Yeah, totally.
Because I think what we kind of started and then COVID hit and then we were just trying to get stuff done was just chipping away at that capital improvements list as we wanted. And then, it's 7 things with the Burwood drainage too. And then we handled the split up of the equipment beforehand. I mean, we've been a little busy. These things are gonna get done, and I'm not worried about spending that whole entire thing. I remember you talked about, we're gonna come in under.
Yeah.
And we need to come in under because, for one, we gotta get the best deals on the projects we're doing as far as buying equipment, having contracts done and everything like that. But also, we do have more parks in Norwood that need renovated, and we are working on that park audit tool, so we can kind of rate the parks, come in, renovate these parks. These parks they're not cheap to renovate. So some of that money that does roll over, we get some of these key things done now, like lights, even some cameras at parks. So we are protecting our investment. We got lights at the parks, we got cameras there. We're protecting our investments. And then we also have money left over that rolls over to kind of fund that park renovation project and plan. So I'm not too worried about not spending it all. If it's going to roll over the next year, then that's more than we have for next year. But we are going to get a lot of key things done this year. Some big time things that have been neglected, like the stairs, lights. I mean, those lights that are there right now are really old, so they're going to get done.
Yeah. So, just one item to note. So, I mean, the money it's not like it's reserved indefinitely for that. So we've appropriated funds this year, but if we don't spend it, it's not like it's lost. It's just funny that it just goes back into the overall pot. But we can choose next year, right? We can choose to move those projects over and say, look, if they didn't get done this year, we're going to do them next year, which we did do that this year for the projects from last year.
Yeah.
So, no, that makes a lot of sense. I just want to make sure again that I want to ensure that we get a lot of the stuff done, because there's a ton of stuff that we put in this capital improvement plan. I just want to make sure that we get to it and we get it knocked out, because I think that Norwood would be better for it.
Yeah, we're definitely going to get to it. I mean, some of these things are things that have been sitting there and for multiple years that haven't been done. So we're definitely going to get those done. They're the big priority items.
Cool.
Well done, team. I'm grateful for this. I think the last thing was the 2021 outlook. I actually want to table that. I think it's really important I use the energy and the conversations we've had right now to make sure 2020 has a strong look. I've got quite a lot of bullets that I got to go to the respective people to get the answers to and report back to you. I don't want to start to confuse ourselves by looking at 21 just yet, although it needs to be done. Let's focus on conversation we've had right here. Let me go get any of the answers that were open-ended, and we'll bring them back. So pause on 2021, but I think this was a good look at 2020.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to just, overall strategy for kind of how we approach this. So we still
Yeah.
we have our fiscal emergency plan. So whatever's in the plan for 2021, they are the appropriations that we have to start out with, right, for 2021. So the question is, I don't think that there's any plans to adjust the plan this year. So when we look at budgeting for the departments, are we basically asking them to just give us the budget that we have in the capital improvements plan? Are we asking them to give us other stuff that we might use to change the plan next year? I didn't know if you had if you talking to the auditor and the mayor, and presumably maybe the state, if you all knew kind of what you all were planning when it comes to the capital improvement, or the fiscal emergency plan.
I'd like to have that conversation with them. I mean, to be honest, my approach was really to be independent of the appropriations already made, because I think you can change them between now and the first quarter. So I didn't see them as fixed, and I wanted to get the big three to give me their needs list over again, as if it were a fresh look, and then we could see have they been handled either in the rest of 2020 or to be handled in 2021. That was how I was thinking, but it's fair to...
So I guess when I say they're fixed, it's not necessary. I mean, that is how we've always been told, that you have to follow the plan initially, but then the auditor states they can approve through the power that they've been given from the Financial Recovery Commission. They can approve edits to that plan without having to actually redo the plan. Like we can move appropriations around a little bit with their approval. So yeah, I think
What's a little bit?
Well, I mean, when I say a little bit, I mean, I don't think that we can completely go and change every line item, right? Deviate from the plan. They're going to say, you know what, just redo the plan, just do a new plan. I mean, you remember all the work that went into that.
Yeah, I was just kind of, when I talked to the folks about what needs are being met, I was focusing specifically on taking the capital improvements plan and tweaking that and using that as the guide. Because I always felt like you could, if there were, first of all, that was just a guide. And second of all, if we wanted to change appropriations, they'd be for probably the timing of things, because I can't imagine there'd be an enormous new thing that they didn't see on the horizon. So when we were talking back in, and I know you were part of that, back in March of February, March of April, or of 2020. So I'd like to kind of stick with that. I'd like to just, for this round, let me just get feedback on kind of the major things that aren't getting done in 2020, or the timeline for 2021, and then bring that forward. And I suppose that is what I would talk to Jim and the mayor about.
Yeah, I think that's a fine plan, because then at that point you get there genuinely. You're acting as if we don't have a financial recovery plan.
I am. That's exactly right.
Which is good, because then you can then see, look, like where are we based on what we would do in a normal year versus what we have in this plan, which would then help influence whether we actually need to change the plan, or if the plan's pretty solid, and we might just have to ask for some minor adjustments without changing it.
Yeah, so in my head, first step you've nailed it. I should have started. I want to pretend that I'm just asking you regardless of what's on any plan. I can't imagine there is enormous changes to that, because they did a pretty, those folks did a pretty thorough job at 2020. To me, it's just making sure that that's more of are we executing on the things we said we were going to execute on?
Yep, no, I think it's a good plan. Perfect.
Good question, Sarah. So, what can we expect at the next meeting? 3 things. 1, where appropriate, a review or follow-up on some of these items. I mean, some of them are like the smaller commentaries. I'm going to keep a running schedule of all the comments here, and I'll send it out to you guys. But I think some of the bigger items, like I love that we're marrying up the parks schedule with parks money, with allocated money. So that's going to be something I kind of want to make public, because I think that is just such a cool tool that we collectively are trying to create. So some of those, we'll start with follow-ups from this meeting at the next Finance Committee. The other 2 items that I really want to make sure that we stick to is an education and understanding of TIFs. We hear a lot about it, particularly with PLK, and I think that I've tried to educate myself as best I can, but I'm far the furthest thing from an expert. And so bringing in either someone from the bond council or there were recommendations from Keith Moore, getting in an expert and kind of going through an overview of TIFs and how that they will play a part for this PLK is going to be pretty useful. So I'm going to make sure that I'm just calling it like TIF education and bring in some speakers for that as part of the next finance committee. Lastly, claims process. We brought up why it's an issue some 4 months ago or more, and I think we had a discussion on procedural changes, but then we didn't do anything about that. I think it just kind of fell under the weight of some other higher priority stuff, but we need to bring that up again. So we're going to do that very intentionally, and I would like the result to be something close to a claims process or at least a very formal discussion of that. So those are the 3 items of the next finance committee, unless you guys had anything you wanted to add. All good? Folks, thank you. I didn't really have an expectation, I think, but that felt like a useful conversation to me. Hopefully you felt so too. Anything else?
Nothing from me.
Easy. Hey, thanks everyone who showed up. Thank you, Ms. Maloney, for giving us a 2021 overview. But we'll call it close, and I'll follow up with these questions as soon as I can for you guys.
Perfect. Thank you.